Welcome to the Valhalla Filmcast, a show where normal guys talk about the films that they love. And here are your hosts, Bryce Thompson, Brian Hammond, and Cody Ryrie. Now get ready, because the show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Valhalla Filmcast. I'm here with Cody and Brian. We are here to talk about Mad Max. This isn't going to probably be the last time we talk about Mad Max because the podcast is kind of based off Mad Max, but we're talking about it again. New movies, old movies. Cody, what do you think?
Well, I heard this YouTube commentator say that, and it's a guy I respect his opinion a lot, but I'm not sure I agree with him on this thesis that he put forward. And the thesis was that Fury Road was so good and such a realization of what George Miller was always trying to get at that it made the old movies obsolete. It kind of reminded me of George Lucas. George Lucas used to always talk like this, and it used to be exciting, and now it just made me feel kind of nauseous. But he used to say, well, the original Star Wars was just what I could do with that technology, but you have no idea what I could do with today's technology, and I'm finally gonna be able to fulfill my vision. And then it was, the prequels. And it was bad. And George Miller's kind of like the opposite George Lucas. The two Georges. Yep. The battle of the Georges. Because I think that in his head, George Miller always saw Fury Road. And yet he was only able to get, Mad Max, Road Warrior, Thunderdome out. Now, that being said, I like Mad Max, Road Warrior, and Thunderdome. But I will admit, after Fury Road, they do feel limited. I think limited is the right word. So I don't know if it makes them obsolete, but his question he would ask in the podcast, he'd say, well, which one do you want to watch right now? And I'd always be like, well, probably Fury Road. So I don't know.
It depends on who you are as well, because there's some people that grew up on the originals, and that is Mad Max. Fury Road is the unwanted stepchild now, not the other three. So it depends on if you grew up with them. I hadn't seen a single Mad Max until Fury Road. And then I was like, ooh, let's watch them all. And they're all great. I like them all, and I wouldn't want to get rid of any of them. But I don't know if I agree that they're obsolete at all. I think that they're obviously a little outdated since they were made a while ago with not very great technology or money, which also always hinders something. But I think that they definitely have their place.
That's the thing, though. What I'm hearing from you is to enjoy the old Mad Maxes, you have to have some background knowledge. You have to know that they had limited money. You have to know that they had limited technology. And you have to give those films allowances for those things, which you don't have to do for Fury Road. And you were saying that some people really love the early Mad Max movies because they grew up with them. So there's the nostalgia factor. So I'm talking as a person stepping in, I don't know anything about it. If I watch them all, does he have a point? That we've finally reached what he's trying to reach.
You're going to pick Fury Road.
I agree with Bryce. There's definitely a nostalgic cult status for the original three. However, I think that everything culminated with Fury Road. I think it's the start of a new chapter. The first three still are excellent. And full disclosure, it's been years since I've revisited these. I didn't get the opportunity to rewatch them before Fury Road. But I think they still have a place. But it's not the same level of say expertise and cinematography. All that is a different caliber with Fury Road. I think if we were to look back in say 20-30 years, I think Fury Road for sure will kind of be what that go-to film more than the other three. Maybe, I don't know.
I would think so, just because of how they're made. And yes, I have to agree with what you're saying, Cody, that if some random dude just, let's take my wife, she watched Mad Max, the first one, Road Warrior, and then Fury Road, she's definitely going to pick Fury Road over it just because of how it is. I mean,
production value kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. And that definitely appeals to I would say moviegoers now, in my opinion, that if it looks beautiful and pretty and great, it's more appealing than something that is lower budget. That might make you stingy, I don't know. I just think that's the way it works. You could also say the same for like Star Wars. Say someone goes to episode 7 and then they watch episode 4, they're probably going to pick episode 7 over episode 4 because that's the way it works.
Well, and I think that's the comparison, right? I think that's the comparison you have to make, is the Star Wars series versus the Mad Max series. Now, however, I think that the Star Wars movies, the old ones, hold up maybe better compared.
I can agree. Also, you have to see where they were made too. And
there seems like in Star Wars, there's a very big attempt to tell a continuing story. In Mad Max, it's very episodic. There's not continuing story. There's not continuing actions in the first film. Don't really affect actions in the second or the third. And you have a character who steps in and out of worlds, and so that's why I think it was so easy to replace Mel Gibson.
Yep.
Because
I was just going to say that. Yep.
He's the silent man who wanders in and out of people's lives, and that's very different from Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like the comparison is apt in some ways and not in others. It's apt in that George Lucas lost touch of what made him a good filmmaker, and George Miller, through practice and discipline and whatever, became a better filmmaker.
Yes.
And so you see this kind of parallel journey, I think, where there's one who's really struggling against his limitations. They both are, actually. They're both kind of struggling with this grand vision they have, but they can't quite make it work because of technology and money. One of them eventually realized that vision, and it was something awe-inspiring, and the other one had a different vision than we all thought. And it didn't work for a lot of people.
Yes.
It involved a big green screen.
Yes, and that's the thing also that I think is interesting is the question I wanted to ask, and if you want to go back to the other one first before you answer that, that's fine. Would Mad Max, the Mad Max universe, do you think flourish under different leadership like Star Wars has? So say George Miller passes away, heaven forbid, or decides he doesn't want to do Mad Max movies anymore, and so some new young whippersnapper comes up and does it. Will that work like J.J. Abrams in Force Awakens? Or is George Miller such an essential part of the Mad Max universe that can't happen?
It makes me kind of queasy to answer that question. Like, just to imagine George Miller not a part of it is interesting. Because it's his child, like, but before I answer this question, I need to go back and we talked about how George Lucas lost touch with the prequels, but you also have to remember that George Miller wanted to make this movie in 1997. Now, I don't think we would have gotten the same Fury Road we have now if it was made back when he wanted it to be made.
Yeah.
I mean, because look at the technology. Don't you think it would have been filled with green screen?
I don't know.
I don't really know.
The Mad Max movies have never been filled with green screen.
And see, I was thinking that too.
That was at the cusp of that technology, and it seemed like everyone was kind of clamoring to utilize it prematurely in some cases.
That could be.
And
so who knows?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, and George Miller's not afraid of technology. I mean, the man made the Happy Feet movies, and they're computer animated films. Yeah. He's not afraid of a computer graphic thing. And here's the interesting thing. This is the question that, again, I don't know if we can answer this question, but perhaps he saw the giant backlash against using these tools. I mean, everybody's felt the tide of this.
Yeah.
This is this is not just Star Wars, although Star Wars is the big poster boy for it, go back to the models, go back to the makeup, go back to the real sets. Even Prometheus, for an example, is that way, get back to what made the original great, let's do it. And I don't know if George Miller absorbed that, or if he always felt that way. And if we'd gotten a 98, 99 Mad Max, that may have answered this question, if he went back to the original stuff, or if he got caught up in that wave of we can do anything now with rubbery computer people.
I definitely think that it helped it coming out this long.
Yeah. I think it was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I agree.
I think.
Also, to answer your question, I think it would be very interesting to see a Mad Max movie without George Miller as the director.
He's old. He's in his 80s, you know.
I mean, yeah,
it's going to happen.
I just don't know how. I mean, I would go to it. I would definitely watch it. I would probably go there like opening night and watch it.
I guess that okay, while we're being devil's advocate, we might as well go whole hog here. Who do you hire to replace George Miller making a Mad Max movie? You know?
Man.
I'm full of questions tonight.
Yeah, you are. And no answers.
Who can have that?
Man.
You know, who has that epic scope? Who has the eye? Who has that? You know what I admire about George Miller so much is his ability to handle geography in his action scenes. I mean, you always know where people are. You always know what the stakes are. Part of me says if James Cameron wasn't just making Avatar movies now, that he might be a good choice to come in because he's very good at that kind of that geographical action, although he falls down on the dialogue. So, actually, it might be a good idea to hire James Cameron and get rid of the dialogue.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the one weak link that Jim Cameron always seems to have is stilted dialogue.
Michael Bay. That's who you hire.
Huh. Well, this has been the Valhalla Filmcast.
I'm not going to lie and say that didn't pop into my head and quickly fleeted. But
see, Bay misunderstands
I don't know.
everything that makes George Miller's movie really good, though. I mean, I liked 13
yeah,
Hours.
definitely.
I'm not going to bad talk him too bad.
But I mean, it just wouldn't work.
His
I just don't
movies,
think it'd work.
besides 13 Hours, are so soulless.
Yeah.
They're shine, they're chrome, you know, it's bad. They're all surface level. And the thing about
all of them are Transformers.
Yeah, that's right. The thing that I think that Miller's films have, especially Fury Road, is a beating heart. There's real humanity underneath that story, and a lot of times, and I think 13 Hours is an exception to this, but a lot of times Michael Bay's films, they have a real lack of heart, they have a lack of humanity, they're very surface level, they have that kind of weird... Also, the thing about Michael Bay is his camera likes to leer at women in a kind of a lecherous way.
And
you know, let's have women bend over and let's oogle them. That is the most polar opposite of George Miller's, like, let's get women in power and not objectify them that I can imagine. So I think Michael Bay might be the other end of the battery. He's the opposite pole of George Miller.
Okay, let's say Mel Gibson gets a hold of this project.
Ooh. That's interesting.
It is. It's very interesting. I think because his movies have that type of like heart behind them. Like I'm always with the main character in his movies. But how does that translate to him making a Mad Max movie?
Well, and obviously he has a big history.
There would definitely be a lot more violence.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'd be more violence. And there'd be more of a redemption story somehow. That's his.
Isn't Fury Road kind of a redemption in a way?
It is.
You know,
it is.
I think I would be.
That would be interesting.
I'd be kind of interested in that.
That might be my pick too. I mean, Mel would really bring. Like I said, his history with it would be very fascinating to see how, you know, to him to direct another actor in that role. Is really interesting, but he's amazing at that kind of action. And like we saw with Hacksaw Ridge and with Braveheart, is it super violent? Yes. Is it super effective? Absolutely. Yes. And that's what you need with this kind of story.
I think that leaning more towards Mel and his violence, it seems like you'd almost kind of need that in a way, because you have the color, You have the crazy cool car stunts. Now where do you go? More crazy color and car stunts? You need something different, and I think he would...
Well, he might add
right.
This would be interesting, too, a spiritual dimension to Mad Max as well.
Oh.
Mad Max finds some kind of something to believe in. Because the movies so far have been very humanistic in a way. Who do we believe in? Well, we believe in people. The whole point, I think, at least one of the big points, is there is no government structure. There is nobody telling me what's right and wrong anymore. And so I differentiate myself by having my own moral code.
Yes.
And Mel Gibson's characters always get their moral code from a spiritual compass. And so it would be a big change from the previous Mad Max films, but it might be an interesting change to see Max or another character
would be cool,
get
though.
that.
It'd be cool is because he does always have that kind of spiritual compass in his movies. There's already that religious aspect of the cars, but he can magnify that, and I think that would be amazing.
I don't think you're supposed to like that part. I mean, you're not supposed to. The thing about this brilliant about Fury Road is I do identify with the War Boys. I don't know if I'm supposed to. I don't think I am. But some part of me thinks, that's not a bad way to live. That's
no kidding.
You got something to believe in. You got something to give your life for.
I'm just randomly driving down the road, throwing up the V8 sign everywhere.
Because that's another thing is religion is seen in a very negative light, at least in Fury Road. Yeah. It's something that enslaves people. It's something that takes, and I don't think you can go an about face all the way on that. I think you've got to keep at least part of that. But I do think it would be interesting for somebody to find some kind of spiritual dimension in their lives in a Mad Max film. And Mel Gibson might be the guy to do that. I don't know. That's an interesting idea. That's the most interesting suggestion I think that's been brought up. I don't know. Brian, you got something to top that? Who are you thinking?
No, I think so. I think visually he's kind of a little bit different than George Miller.
Yeah.
If you look at the color saturations and all of that and costuming, we haven't seen anything like that really. Not that, I mean, he did an Apocalypto, I guess. The costumes were incredible, but I mean, he had a reference there. He had a historical reference to pull from. I'd be on board if anyone. Out of all the directors, I think I'd want to see him the most, just because he has a tie to it, an emotional tie. He's made 3 of the films, and it'd be neat to see him, kind of try to adapt that and make it his own.
Well, and he spoke very positively about Fury Road. When he saw it, I heard him talk, and he said he just thought the film was fantastic, and he didn't have any. At least publicly, he had no harsh feelings towards Miller or the franchise. That's a positive.
Plus, we'd get a pretty cool cameo, I bet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right?
You could tie together the two mythologies. You could fix all of the continuity issues that Fury Road presents by somehow showing how it went from Mel to other British guy.
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy, yeah. With the dreamy eyes, yes.
What would be cool is maybe they could do like a in-between. Because we're talking about how they're so visually different. Maybe if you could somehow like mesh the two worlds. Because the other 3 like aren't super colorful, obviously.
No, they're not.
The 4th one is like blow your eyeballs all over the screen colorful. And so if you could like mesh them together somehow and do like and kind of just like answer questions, I think that'd be really cool.
That would satisfy the nerd in me that wants everything to work on a timeline and okay, how's this work? How does that work? I remember when I saw Mad Max and then I watched Road Warrior, that there was things that didn't quite line up, and then from Road Warrior to Thunderdome to Fury Road, then I started just going crazy, like, no, but this doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and eventually I just had to let it go because it's not meant to line up.
Well, that's what I think works, like we've said, works so well with Fury Road, is you can put it not anywhere, but just about anywhere. You can like stick it in the middle of some places and it works because he's never in the same spot. Mad Max isn't with the same people really ever.
And there's little irritating things like the music box that continues from Road Warrior to Fury Road. But how did it get there? And how did that... it's enough to drive you nuts.
Which makes you wonder, there has to be more ideas in George Miller's mind.
I think he's screwing with this. I think he's an old man who's screwing with us because it's in its own way, it could be a total rejection of this serialized franchise universe where, Marvel, everything has to fit together, Star Wars, it's movies in a series, and yet the connections matter not at all. It could be a response to that, or it could be just how he tells stories, but it definitely makes it stand out apart from all of the other film series because they don't care. Does that not match up? Who cares?
The whole movie was kind of we do what we want in a way, I mean, the costume designer didn't even wear like a fancy dress or anything when she accepted her award at the Oscars, and it was amazing. Like that, it was just, that was Fury Road. Like when she walked up on the stage, I was like, yes, you are Fury Road. You are bucking all the norms. You don't do what you're supposed to, and you are Fury Road. And it was awesome.
I admire the fact that each film has a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like, well, this is where we're going to go next, or this is a nod to the previous film. They all stand on their own, which is a positive to that kind of storytelling, and something I do get a little fatigued by in the other franchises. This constant, we're never going to have a real ending because it always keeps going. That's something I like, and something also I get tired of. So Mad Max is another break from that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because we've totally been trained for that, to always be expecting number 2. That's the way our brains have been programmed for how. Toy Story. I mean, that's the first one I can remember, and that came out when I was little. So always, just when's the next one coming out? When's the next one coming out? And then when it doesn't come out, which I guess this one technically is, The Incredibles, we're irritated and we're like, what the heck? Come on, you set it up, now deliver, and we're upset. So I like how Mad Max has done that. He's always set it up to, if he wants to make another one, he can. If he doesn't, he doesn't have to.
Stands on its own. Nice. I do like that. That is refreshing.
Nice.
Which is part of our criteria to make a great movie. If you've listened to the podcast, you know that it has to stand on its own.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first. Mel Gibson directing the what? No, what?
That would be pretty amazing.
That's
if
not
that
real?
comes to pass, that'll be awesome.
If
we've got it on. It's recorded too. Yeah, we can prove it.
Yeah.
If there is someone who has some type of power out there listening to this podcast now, please make this happen. You have at least 3 people that will go and see it. So,
well, I think George at least deserves one more crack at it before we put him in his grave.
Is there one in pre-production, Cody? Do you know?
It's been talked about back and forth a bunch.
Yeah, it has. George Miller did an interview like right after it came out, and he said he's taking a break for now, but that was back when it came out, so he
probably almost killed him.
They talked about having him do a Superman film.
Yes,
he was in talks, and that fell through. And oh my gosh, do I wish that had not fallen through?
How amazing would that be?
Wow.
Hopefully,
he could have changed
his energy,
the landscape of film right now because he would have put this whole DC thing on a totally different track.
Yes,
than it's gone on.
They definitely need. Goodness, let's not get into that. So yeah, Mad Max is very, very interesting filmmaking for sure. Which I'm glad.
Well,
that we have
did we answer the question definitively?
No,
yes or no? Okay.
They'll always have a place. Obsolete. I don't agree with that. Just because I love, I love cult films. I love independent films. I love films that don't have all that Hollywood glamour and shine, that are rough on the edges. I live for that. That's good. Mm-hmm. So
there's a lot of love in those early movies. You can tell the first Mad Max, they didn't have the money to edit it, so they filmed a bunch, and then he edited in his buddy's kitchen for like 2 years, just trying to make the footage into something because they didn't finish it. that's love and drive.
Dedication. Are you kidding
that's
me?
incredible.
Yeah.
And you can't make that something like that obsolete. I mean, that is just, there's just too much there.
It's just kind of amazing when a man can sustain that kind of stamina and passion decades, and then take that stamina and passion with the money and go to Namibia and make something like Fury Road 2. So I respect his passion. I'm even more in awe of it now that he's in his 80s and it hasn't gone anywhere.
Yep. And I think since I watched it after Fury Road, it obviously could kind of play into me liking Mad Max more because of that. But I don't think so. I think if I would have watched this before or after, if I didn't even know about Fury Road, I think I would still like the film. I think it's a good film. I just think I think that is the way it is because of the love behind it. You can tell that everybody was dedicated. Everybody in that film was dedicated because they knew, this is our one shot that we really got. And I think they did a good job at it. But yeah, anything else before we take off?
No,
I think so.
I feel satiated.
All right. This has been the Vol Filmcast. I'm Bryce Thompson.
I'm Brian Hammond.
And I'm Cody Rowry.
And we'll talk to you next time.
The following views, opinions, and commentary are the sole property of the Valhalla Filmcast. Any unauthorized reproduction without prior consent is prohibited. Any incidental music, audio clips, or film trailers are used for the sole purpose of film criticism and commentary as allowed under the Fair Use Act.